Good morning and welcome to the Ask Weldon Show special episode. Everybody's asking me why North America and Team Liquid are bad, and so that's what the show is about today. MSI has started, and we are on the third day of group stages now. And the first 2 days, Team Liquid has gone 0-4, whereas Fnatic has gone 2-2, and everybody's up in arms about why NA sucks again at international events. So I'm going to do a full show dedicated to this topic, and I have 4 notes about why North America is bad, and then I have a psychological analysis of Team Liquid coming up. So first of all, why? Oh, yeah. So welcome to the show. Yeah, my name is Weldon. Blah blah blah. Intro. Hi, I'm back. Okay, yeah, so by the way, I usually do the intro like, come please watch the show every single day, twitch.tv/MyGamesWeldon, 7 p.m. North America, the show goes live, 6:30 p.m., we go live on Twitch. That probably doesn't make sense to you. 6:30 p.m. Los Angeles time, North America, we go live every single day with the show. Sometimes it's the Ask Weldon show, sometimes it's Fitness Fridays, sometimes it's Science Saturdays. Sometimes it's this, where we're going to be talking about Team Liquid North America. Please make sure to go to Twitch and follow the channel so you get notifications when we go live, and come check out the show every day, because you can ask questions in chat, and then I can answer them there. And we can have a nice dialogue back and forth. You exchange more information, etc. But if you just want to ask a static question, anchor.fm/Weldon Green is where you call in your question, and then it comes onto my show as an audio question, and then I answer it. Okay. Also, I have a bit of a cough. Sorry about that. Why North America is bad. Part 1, player base. The player base is like 1/3 the size of Europe, and it's one of the smaller in the world. Vietnam has a larger player base, for crying out loud. It is easier to stay on a team and be lazy. Therefore, it is less competitive. It is easier to stay on a team and be a lazy trainer, and therefore it's less competitive. Less quality on the bottom end means less quality on the middle end, which means less quality on the top end. I have had the opportunity to coach at the top end of both North America and EU in terms of teams, and what I see is it's easier to stay on a top team in North America, and it's easier to stay on a middle and a bottom team in North America and not get beat off by some amazing rookie that comes from the ladder, with less games in solo queue and less training in solo queue. I think that the most solo queue I've ever seen played in my life was in the G2 Gaming House. I think the basic standard for solo queue for staying on a European team is like obviously 2/3 more than in North America. And that's just the case. And I think that imports solve that on the top teams. Like, I think that the culture in the top teams of North America is not lazy. I think it's workaholic. Great. Okay, so what's the problem? The problem is that even when you have imports on the middle and the bottom teams, they normalize, right? It's easier for them to give up and like kind of go with the flow than it is to drive their teammates' levels higher and to like, let's say you have an import comes in, he's playing 20 games a night and he's like carrying on the games and he's really frustrated, and you're like in the middle of the pack team and you're just playing Fortnite and you feel super guilty. And the org doesn't care, so they're not going to fire anybody. Eventually, the import gives up. It's easier for him to give up and just be like, I'm just going to trade off this team or go back to Korea or whatever, after this season, or to just start playing Fortnite with the other guy, than it is for the other guy to find ambition and motivation, right? He just feels guilty and ashamed. And then just like the way that most of these video game players like handle their shame is by like avoiding it by devolving themselves into more forms of escapism, i.e. Fortnite. So yeah, so it's just not a very productive situation. So anyway, it's not the top teams, right? It's the middle and the bottom. It's easier to stay on because of the ladder, because of the player base, and therefore they're less competitive, and so they don't drive up the top end as much as in other regions. That's just pure statistics. Okay, so that's number 1. Why North America is bad, part 2. Giving power to orgs too soon. Let me explain this. I don't mean to orgs. I think orgs are fine. Orgs are great. They help players sign sponsorship. It was a really good trade-off when players started giving power to orgs and said, you can now fire me and hire me and fire my teammates and hire my teammates in exchange for managing all the finances and the business and signing sponsorships and doing all that stuff so I can focus on performance. When NA teams did this, that was a good move. When NA teams said, okay, we're going to now hire coaches and managers, or coaches and analysts, and you're in charge of all the stuff and winning and the game, and I no longer have responsibility for that, that was too soon. There are not enough good coaches and analysts for this move to exist. Players, therefore, are the best people at understanding the game and understanding what needs to be done and should be taking responsibility for winning and losing. But they offloaded that responsibility to the coaches mentally in North America long ago. Like it is like the teams that I visit and the teams that I feel, and not so much TSM, right? There's ambition there, there's personal drive, but a lot of the other teams like look at Optic, for example. Optic, they literally lost their way to like last place in North America without making a single change. Can you believe that? Like it feels to me like nobody there is taking responsibility for winning. Not the players, not the team manager, not the coaching staff, nobody. So what does that say to you? It says that like the responsibility for winning comes from is sitting on nobody's shoulders. The players have mentally pushed it off to the coaches because that's what they've been told that needs to happen, right? The coaches suck and are not taking the responsibility for themselves. Coaches, I'm using plural here. I'm not attacking Zabatine. I think that's the Optic coach. Like I don't know anything about him, right? But I do know he just lost a ton of games, and he lost before. And I believe that coaches are on the hook for performance, but they're not taking that responsibility. Like it's when players lose, they're like, well, we need better coaches and analysts, and also my teammates are bad. And when coaches lose, they're like, well, I can't win with bad players. No. Players are responsible for improving themselves and along the metrics that they and their coaches determine. Coaches are responsible for winning. That is where the core game philosophy should come from. If they cannot do that and they cannot win, then they shouldn't be responsible for winning. Okay? In which case, players need to be on the hook. So one of the best ways to do that is just eliminate coaching. Maybe we need to step in that direction. Obviously, we can't because Riot mandates it, right? But the problem is we need to eliminate the idea that like players are personally pushing off the responsibility of winning. They're not getting mad enough when they're losing because like they're a part of a movement, right? They're a part of an organism, and it's much easier to just kind of push this stuff off than to take responsibility for your teammates sucking by like complaining that like it's either him or me. Like I want to win games. Fire this guy or I'm leaving your org, that kind of thing. Or like, this guy, or like coming out on Reddit and saying like my teammate is training like 2 games a night and then they're playing a MOBA the rest of the night and I'm training like 15 games a night and then we go on the weekend and I try to carry and I can't. Or like, which is a horrible backstabbing thing to do, right? But the fact that it's not happening, I feel like these players are somehow just waiting for somebody to do something. Nobody is taking responsibility for winning in North America, and everybody's pushing it around, and at the end of the day, it's not sitting on anybody's shoulder. It's a very psychologically easy thing to do to offload responsibility. So I think that orgs gave up power to, like players, gave up this power to the coaches and the orgs too soon because there are not good enough coaches. Now, whether that's a chicken or egg problem, like coaches are not paid enough, therefore orgs can't attract good coaches, or whether there's just not enough good coaches, so you shouldn't pay coaches anything at all unless they win. It should be all performance-based pay, maybe. I don't know which the problem or how to solve it. I do know that you need something to build on if you're going to build a good coach, and that is either they should be an ex-pro, so they're an expert at the game, or they should be an ex-coach, so they should have 10, 15 years of like head or assistant coach experience, like managing people and modifying behavior and like creating team cultures and creating game philosophy. And they should understand the game at a high level too. So they should be like, I don't know, like plat and above or something. So at least they can discuss the game and start to pick up macro and stuff. And it's not like, gold 5 macro. So that is my part 2. Giving up power too soon towards the coaches meant that like nobody has responsibility. And this is not a problem on the top teams. Okay, this is not a problem on the top teams. Like you look at the players in the top teams and they are driven. The problem is this happens in the middle and the bottom. And then the quality of the whole region suffers because these teams need to be pushing up everybody else to raise up the region, okay? Number 3, part 3 of why North America is bad. Culture. Nobody in North America knows how to win. When they lose, they just kind of die under the weight of their fan expectations. Therefore, they require sports psychology. So other regions can rely on the underdog mentality. Sorry, I'm a little bit sick. Other regions can rely on the underdog mentality to find their own style, to own their own style, and to play it on the international stage. They can be like, nothing to lose, go for it. Like, oh my gosh, we're from Vietnam. Like, we should just play and play hard. You know, Fnatic is able to capture that. I think Reckless said in game after the first day, we want to play like we're 2-0. Okay. I think that this is a hack way of doing this. I think that they would be better if they choose to just do it without having to imagine that they're 2-0, right? But what he's getting at is they're going to play freely. They're going to play their own style. They're going to play hard, and they're just going to give up on like trying to be whatever it is that they imagine they should be, and they're just going to play the game as they're able to with their own style. And it's going to be enough or it's not going to be enough. It's either going to be it's enough and we guessed it right and we prepared and like this is us, or it's going to be not sufficient to the task and they're going to lose. Either way, they're owning it, right? That is a kind of mentality that is hard to cultivate and maintain after you lose the first game. Like when you have the mentality and you're winning, great. When you have the mentality and you lose, oof, like you need a really good set of players, experienced like staff, like, you know, pregame speeches, like hype. You need all sorts of stuff going on to maintain that. Or you need a region that like is like, oh my gosh, our team's at an international tournament, just play your best, you know, kind of thing going on to do it. Like, or you need a culture of winning, like Flash Wolves, you know, where they just like know how to be themselves. They're probably very disappointed that they didn't own up to their own skill level last year at Worlds, and they probably like are like, okay, when we go on stage, we need to be us and just play us. You know, nothing to lose and everything to prove. And we just do what we know how to do and don't try to be somebody else. So nobody in North America kind of knows how to do this, and when they lose, they end up just dying under these fan expectations and not really owning their own style and finding this underdog mentality. Therefore, you have to have sports psychology training to instill this consistently within teams. However, in my experience, sports psychology's training is hired like Band-Aids, whereas in reality, it's like a weight room. Like it's something you do consistently to build up the mental resilience to pull this off, and you build a culture. But the way that North American teams hire for this kind of culture building is like a Band-Aid. It's like, oh, we're losing. Quick, buy a Band-Aid. Okay, we won one game. Okay, get rid of it. Rip it off. So they will continue to go unprepared in international tournaments because maybe they bring somebody in international tournaments and they start to fail, or maybe they bring somebody in when they're prepping for an international tournament, which is too late, by the way, instead of like being like, okay, we want to have a culture of winning in our team, so let's hire somebody who's going to set that culture and build it every single day across our entire staff, coaching, analyst, player, Smash Brothers, like everywhere, whatever. Okay, why North America is bad. Part 4, finally, final reason. The skill difference is actually much closer than most fans understand. The skill difference between winning and losing at these international tournaments is far closer than what most fans understand. Please keep in mind, League of Legends is a snowball game. It's one of the only games in the world, sport or esport or otherwise, where like you get an advantage and you physically become taller, stronger, faster than the other person. Okay, this does not happen in tennis. Do not compare League of Legends to all these traditional sports where it's always equal. Okay, do not compare League of Legends to these other esports where it's like you shuffle the deck and you start over again. League of Legends is not a momentum based game. Okay, the momentum is literally built into the game. It's literally like an evolution based game. You make a mistake, and if the other team is good, it's over. Okay, so the skill difference does not look like a lot of what these games play out to be, because it's actually much closer. In my experience, at 4 international tournaments. No, let's see. 2016 summer, IEM, MSI, Rift Rivals. That doesn't count, right? I wasn't even there for that. I was out of town. Worlds, yeah, 4 international tournaments. The skill difference is much smaller than what the fans kind of like understand in terms of like who's gonna win and lose games, but it all comes down to that 1%, right? That like extra gear then, because the when you look at a statistical distribution and you're in the center of the distribution, like the differences between things are very nominal. When you go to the edge, the smallest difference makes like a very big impact on what's going on. If you look at, for example, gender differences in the middle of the pack, almost meaningless in terms of performance in a lot of different ways. I'm talking, of course, aside from like sport performance, where like testosterone has like a above all overreaching insanity in terms of like impacting how it is that the male body forms. But like if you look at like performance, a lot of other things in the middle of the pack and the average we're talking about in the bell curve, like the differences are very difficult to discern. When you go to the outliers and you look at like the huge statistical end, like the differences show up in very big ways. So statistically, like the skill difference is much closer, but like it plays out at the top end in huge ways in these games where like that are so snowbally. So what does that mean? It means Team Liquid can and will do well the rest of the tourney. Like the 4 games mean nothing is what that means. Of course it means they're bad, right? But they will and can do well the rest of the tournament if they let it go. If they can move past that and just like let it all go and let whatever it is they're trying to prove go and just play purely themselves, their own style for their own joy, and just like throw it all onto the Rift, they can do well. And they will do well if they do that. North America will go into future tournaments. Now listen to me, fans. North America will go into future tournaments with all of these barriers to overcome. Period. It's not going to change in 6 months or 3 months of like local play in our own league. The barriers exist in our own league, okay? And they're reinforcing each other. They're going to continue to exist. North America is going to go into this next international tournament, next year's international tournaments, the year after international tournaments with these barriers. Unless you see these barriers change, right? Then you can like change your mindset. But with these barriers to overcome, and they need to accept that instead of believing somehow that like 3 months of like local league play is going to catch us up when we go back to NA for a season. Okay, it's not. So both the teams and the fans need to understand that you're going into these international tournaments with all of these barriers. And the expectation should be like, okay, let's go and try to win. Let's go and try to win some games, you know? Let's cheer for them and like help them own their own style and be like, it's okay if you lose a few games, if you play amazing, fun League of Legends. Instead of being like, oh, are we going to get first this time? All right. Psychological analysis of Team Liquid. I'm sorry this is a very passionate video. I'm very passionate about North America succeeding, and I really want them to win. But I'm realistic. And it's really simple, you guys. Just literally watch the games. Like, you don't have to wait for an international tournament. I've been watching the NALCS. I've been watching the EU LCS. I've been watching LCK and LMS. It's pretty obvious what's going on, okay? Look at the worst games in the region. Watch all the games, not just the top games, right? It's pretty obvious who's playing good League of Legends and who's not. All of my friends, not all of my friends, some of the people who are renting bedrooms out of my house here in Finland are Vietnamese, right? So we get to watch a lot of the Vietnamese, and I get to hear about what's going on there too as well. It was pretty obvious that they were an insanely strong region. I don't mean insanely strong. Sorry. What do I mean to say? They deserved their own league and their own region. And it's really clear from what I've been watching there. And they don't just kind of like wander around doing crazy stuff. They're undisciplined for sure. But they have like 2 times, I think, the ladder pool that North America does, maybe even more. And so they're just going to be like pretty good in lane. Trust me on that. So it's going to be tough, right? Remember what I said about this is not an evolution-based game, right? It's like a snowball, the game. You make a mistake, and it's harder to play. The team gets bigger and better and faster and stronger than you. Every single mistake that you make. And so when you get into a situation where like there's these two distinct phases of the game, the lane and the post lane, when you get into this situation where you're going to be like handicapped by the lane, yeah, it can go bad for you, no matter how good your macro is. Okay, Team Liquid. Impact, solid enough, a bit too reliant on personal momentum, so he can't be a clutch playmaker unless he's like in the mode to be a clutch playmaker, which I think that he should be able to pull that out at any time. Smithy, fine, but not brazen enough, maybe? He believes in his laners, maybe too much. Like, for example, I think that after Bwipo blew his flash, he should have modified everything to like take advantage of that, instead of being like, okay, I'm comfortable, right? Yay, okay, like, he doesn't have his flash, and so Impact can push freely, and like he doesn't have to die to a gank, and so I'm comfortable. So now we're safe. So now I can just back and play a normal game, right? We have a slight advantage. That slight advantage, when I look at some junglers, when they get a slight, like I will dominate, for example, he's a good example. When they get a slight advantage, or Peanut, it makes them rabid. They're like, I'm going to go there with a crowbar and pry that advantage cleft open into like a chasm. When other junglers get a small advantage, or other teams get a small advantage, it leads them to relax and be like, oh, thank goodness, we have a small advantage. Now we can just like play out normally and rely on our skill to win. That's not how it works. Okay? Unless you're just straight up better than the other team, which North America needs to stop assuming that they are. I would like to see more bloodthirstiness in the play, where like you get a small advantage and you're like, it's like piranha, right? Smelling blood. Instead of you get a small advantage, you're like, whew, we're going to win now. Let's just play normal. No, you're not. Pobelter. In this tournament, he has good team play. Not great carrying. That's just a fact. I think that in most tournaments, he has good team play and not great carrying. I think he has some amazing standout carry moments. I think this is a product of like you are what you practice. So I think if it becomes the meta where mid needs to carry hard, which kind of comes around every once in a while, then it's something that needs to be prepared for consistently a long time, because it's a mental thing, it's a leadership thing, it's an in-game talking thing, it's a what do you do when you're behind thing, it's a how do you carry when you're picked to carry and you have the weight of your team on your shoulders and you drop it. Like, how do you recover from that? There's a massive suite of skills here that needs to be trained over like, multi-week competitive area in the season, where like you're just playing all sorts of iterations of like how it is that the carry is going to go. Well, when you have somebody like Caps who's like, draft me a carry every single scrim, then you're gonna enter into every single scenario. You're gonna understand what it looks like when Caps is tilting, who the best person in the player is to like give him confidence, how the support should be there to back him up every single time, that he gets into a sticky situation. How to draft a carry in one game and have him completely throw the game for you, and then draft it the very next day and have him carry the game for you, right? Like how to recover from that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into this. So this is a team effort, and it needs to be a team effort if they want to be good at it. Double lift, which maybe they are. I'm not sure, but it doesn't look like it. Obviously from the results. Results-based analysis. Yeah, that's all we have to analyze. Double lift puts the weight of the world on his shoulders and strives to carry it. And I think that keeps him from seeking joy and being clued into like who he is and how he wants to play these games. I also think that he has a little bit of unconfidence on himself on Ezreal. Seems to me he hasn't picked this champion yet, and it's like the ultimate showcased carry champion, right? So I want him to put the weight of the world on his shoulders, but I don't want him to carry it. I want him to I just want him to be free, I guess, of burden. Looks like he burdens himself to try to be everything that everybody wants him to be. And I just want him to be himself and be okay with that. Olay. I'm looking at my notes, which is why my eyes drifting away from the camera a lot. Apologies to YouTube. Olay can play make. Okay, we've seen that in the North American LCS. I saw that on Immortals. That was what impressed me when he first came over. I watched his whole first season. I was like, this guy can pull the trigger. He has that gear. That's great. That's a good psychological gear to have. It's something you can build on. I feel like nobody built on it since then, except maybe Double Lift, when they got together. That maybe they formed a partnership where they could like work and improve. But he can play make. He just does not have refinement, right? He doesn't have the refinement of when. Obviously, he's a bit panicked after the first day. He seemed better versus Fnatic. Had a bad champ to go into a deficit on. But he continued to pull the trigger when necessary. They didn't work out. What does his sub out say to you? What does his tweet say to you? Okay. Basically, I think it says exactly what everybody has interpreted on Reddit. Basically saying that he doesn't have confidence in his own play. He's afraid of the crushing expectations of his laner and his team and his fans. And he is afraid that he's letting his team down. And how Joey fixed that was he went on stage and didn't do very much better. And so Ole's like, okay, well, at least I'm the best option they have. So now I can play because I know that somebody's not sitting there backstage like better than me, right? This is the weight of the bench. This is what the bench provides during the season to normal sports teams, is this person sitting over there in your starting spot looking at you, like keeping it warm while you're out there on the field. And then when you come back, they kind of grudgingly slide over and let you sit back down next to them, right? In your like warm seat of the starting spot. They've been keeping warm for you, staring at you out on the field with hunger. And so you step it up and you play hard, and you have to earn that spot. So this is the bench at work, right? Psychologically doing what it did, allowing. But the problem is that the coaching staff maybe doesn't understand how to use the bench effectively. Doesn't know how to say, these are the metrics by which we will determine when we sub. These are the metrics by which we will determine when we do not sub. We choose that, and we believe in you, and this is the fact. And so you are going to be starting, or you are not going to be starting. And this is how we're going to determine how that. Like, it's really important that players understand that substitutions are not a subjective thing based on the whim and the favor of the coach. In every sport that I've ever coached, which mostly is only football, which is soccer for you North Americans that are watching this, there's a clear understanding of when and how and why substitutions are made, and when and how and why starters are swapped onto and off to rosters. And it has to do with performance, and it's performance based. And if it is at the whim of the coach, and I know a lot of people are going to jump into the comments and be like, well, my coach, blah, blah, blah. Yes, well, Pee-wee soccer, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. That's the thing, is like, coaches can do this because they think that's how it's done, right? And in Pee-wee soccer, honestly, you're not going to be measuring your players. You're just going to be starting. I'm talking about like, and in NCAA, even there's other reasons, right? There's other reasons to swap out players, like development or whatever. But at the pro level, when you're dealing with teams where people are paid millions of dollars and lots of money to perform, and there's a starter roster and a sub roster, when people are swapped into and out of the starting roster, there is a strong justification for it. And when people are subbed in and out of games in the tournament, there's a plan for this usually going in. Okay. And I feel like there was no plan here. There was just kind of like Ole cracked a little bit and the discussions were had, and then Joey went on stage, and then he kind of reinforced to Ole that Ole's a fine option compared to me. I feel bad for him, I think that he did okay and fine, and maybe they could play more. But I honestly think that's what happened. I think that's what happened in Ole's mindset. And so I think he was like, the team was like, no, see, we really want you. And he went back on stage. And he was like more confident because he felt like maybe he can outperform Joey at the very least, which is like the best that he can do. And I think that's a very unhealthy way to handle your player's psychology. It is the job of the bench to do that, right? But it's the job of the bench to not do that on the international tournament by abusing one of your other subs. Like, although Joey's probably really happy that he got an opportunity to play, right? So they're probably not seeing it that way. But I just think that this kind of stuff should happen earlier and differently, and with a plan, and if possible, if that plan is stated beforehand, it's even better for everybody in terms of the PR of this. So that's what I think. Why NA is bad, part 1 through 4, and a Team Liquid brief psychological sport analysis kind of thing going on. Let me know what your questions and comments are, either below in YouTube or in the Reddit thread if there is one. And I will see you back on stream in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.